Okay, so being that hills are so important in games, I usually experiment with a lot of different materials. This was done with that canned insulation foam that's under pressure, and you spray it, and then it inflates, and it makes excellent hills or rocky outcroppings, and you can carve it, right? Like I've carved it up here to make more rocky-like sections, and then I flock it all. And this was a pine cone actually that I flocked, filled with glue, and then flocked in order for it to look like a pine tree, right? Like a shrubby pine tree. And so this is a crescent-shaped rock, and then you can go pretty big with this stuff, and this is a very irregular shaped one. I really like this one, and I didn't flock this one. I kind of kept it bare. These are tinfoil rocks, and it needs a little bit of painting and dry brushing rather, and that's because this is very old as well, and you can't even tell that this is tinfoil. This has been in my collection for a long time, and this is an example of another tinfoil project. And moving on with that spray foam that I talked about earlier, here's another rocky outcropping. So you can make them many different shapes. Now the next material is cork bark, and I use this in a lot of my desert rocks, and you can make some really cool desert formations with this kind of cork bark. It is a little bit difficult to paint, however. Even using the spray paint on it, it was difficult to paint. So it has a very kind of a reddish hue to it, and that's the paint I used. And it was for a kind of reddish desert that I was building a table for. Now this white foam, people hate it. It's very light, very squishy, and I can see why. You can't really carve it as well. But I have made that material work for me. And what I did with this particular rock outcrop, this is all foam. And it's that white foam I just showed you. I used a soldering iron to very carefully kind of melt the foam and carve it out. And then put some pieces of foam down here and spray painted everything. Let the foam down here kind of melt a little bit, and that's it. Now this has a harder covering of white glue so that the areas that I didn't want to melt, didn't melt. But I did leave some open areas so they kind of melt in and did all this rough texturing. And then of course I put craft sand on it and painted it, and it's a perfect little rocky outcropping for the tabletop. This is a very different material, and I wanted to show you guys this one. This one has cardboard and a little bit of foam, and this is a hill I made mostly for 15 millimeter, so tiny figures. This is made from felt, and then I cover the foam and the cardboard with the felt, and I glue it down here, make sure it's nice and secure with hot glue. And then this has all these nice like folds here, because that's how the this material folds, right? It creates all these nice little indentations. And then I use texture paint on the felt, and then I use a fabric hardener that they sell at Walmart. It's just a spray, and it really hardens the foam, and so you have this nice hill shape. And I add a little bit of vegetation and flock and everything else, and you have a very nice hill. I've made these bigger, and this goes very nice on a felt kind of play mat, right? And it's great. I like this material. I haven't done many of these hills, but I plan to in the future. They look pretty good, I think. And I got this idea from the old days where you used to use books and put it under your felt mat, and that was your hill terrain. Okay, and the last foam piece I want to show, and this is one of the really flat foam boards that you buy at the dollar store or at Walmart, and I cut pieces of that foam board. I left the card on this one. It's already peeling a little bit, and this is an old piece as well. But then I carved this with a X-Acto knife, and then add little rock pieces. And I also use texture paint, which is great because it doesn't melt the foam. Let it dry, and then use some flocking. And that's how I made this hill. And it's not a bad looking little hill. And again, this is for 15 millimeter. It's downscaled, but you can make these much bigger. So there you go, folks. There are all the different materials that I use, and as soon as I paint those tinfoil hills, you'll see them finished and painted. So thank you very much, folks, and this is gonna pretty much end my week-long talk of trees and hills. And tomorrow and Sunday, of course, we move on to other things.